Welcome back to N.E.R.D.S. I'm your podcast host, Zackary. With me is joined my other host,
Lukas.
Today, Lukas will be needlessly, endlessly ranting dumb shit about...
Today we're going to be talking about Zelda aesthetics, because it's one of my favorite...
And I don't know much about them.
Yeah, I know. It's one of my favorite things of all time, so I'm super excited to get into it. But before we do, how are you? You know, we're going to have a little loosey-goosey, but how are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. A lot of driving back and forth. I had to go get my car in another state for my parents, so...
Always fun.
Drove 4 hours today, so I'm both tired and excited. How are you?
I am doing okay, I think.
Possibly.
Okay. No, I think I'm doing good. It's been, it's that winter season. Seasonal depression is a thing.
Yeah.
And mentally has just kind of been a little...
Yeah.
But, overall, I'm just trying to stay active and busy and creative. So just...
Doing this now?
Doing this is a very big help.
Yeah.
So...
It's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the day that we're recording this is the new year.
Yeah!
It's, January 1st, 2024.
It is. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year. When this comes out, it'll be, I think, the 8th.
Yeah,
when
I
we
think
plan
so.
to release it. But, New Year!
New Year. New us.
2023 was interesting.
Yeah, fucking was.
You want to talk about anything that happened in 2023? Anything exciting?
Oh, God. So, 2023... the best way I can put it into words, and I heard this from Ethan or Crank Gameplays, if you know them.
Love him.
You love him, sweet boy.
Sweet boy.
He posted a video a few days ago that was like, I've done a lot this year, yet I feel like I've done nothing, and I'm sad about it.
Amen.
Yeah, I was like, fuck. That really is just kind of how I was this year. Like I voice acted this year. We're doing this. I finished a campaign.
A year and a half long campaign.
A year and a half long campaign. Yet I feel like I've done nothing with my life. You know what I mean?
Welcome to living. Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy year. I mean, beginning of the year, I started dating my current boyfriend. Mm-hmm. Current. I plan to lose him.
We never planned.
You never planned. In March.
I'll steal him away. Don't worry.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
May, I graduated animation, and you voice acted for both my senior exhibition, which was 6-7 minute long animation, and you voiced one of my main characters, Entropy.
I also co-wrote it, which was
you co-wrote the script for me. Thank God, because that was we revised it a month before it was due.
A month before it was due. Recorded it on the same day.
I feel like that. I want to talk about that a whole separate podcast about creative projects.
Dude,
because that was a process.
It was a lot of fun, but it was also a little bit of a mess.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I had to animate, both voice direct you and my best friend who voiced the other character, edit, then compile, and then finish, and then I ended up doing a visuals exhibition, so I had to set up the visuals of it. But that was May, and then I don't know if much happened for the next... Well, I guess the next thing would be September. I went to the Renaissance Fair, a semi-local one, which was very fun. First time I've ever been to a Renaissance Fair, which was very interesting. I went with my boyfriend. Bought too many things that made me feel like a cool fantasy nerd.
Hell yes. I forgot. Yeah, I went to a Renaissance Fair before, within the summer.
Yeah, you went to a super local one in our town.
Yeah, it was a small one, but it was really, really fun. It was my first one.
Yeah.
I've never been to one, so it was super, super fun. Though I went with my roommates, of course, and they were both like, "Oh, this is nothing compared to Kansas City," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it's my first one, though."
Yeah, our local one is. We love it. It is much more of a crafts fair.
It is.
And the Kansas City Ren Fair is massive.
I really want to go.
We probably will go next year. Yes. I want to see if the friend group will go.
I would love to. I gotta get in shape for that. I gotta look like the barbarian that I want to be.
Oh, we saw so many. There was everybody. It was so fun.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, that was September, and then I've been planning for my D&D campaign, which is going to be in a week. When this releases, it'll be that Thursday. So I get the feeling of it has been both an exciting and very stressful and busy year, but also, did I exist?
Did I do anything?
Did people remember me?
God, that's just such the question this year. Which is why I'm really excited for next year, because I'm wanting to push that momentum, of like continuing to just do things, which, again, this is going to be a huge help on that.
Every week we have to see each other 3 times a week now.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Monday we'll be recording this.
I don't
Tuesday
even see
we'll
my
be
mom that much.
No one sees their parents that much. You spend... I can't remember what this...
you spend 90% of your time with your parents.
In the first, 18 years.
Yep.
Crazy.
I know. It's sad to think about, but it's also kind of... It's relieving in the sense of, the moments that you had are still precious,
Yeah.
And it makes the moments that you will have with them be, while they're far and few between, still be very precious and valuable moments. So
if you're thinking about getting in an argument with your parents, maybe don't.
Unless you really need to get out of that situation.
That's true,
out. I have a friend who had a whole thing whenever they came down and talked about it, but I'm not going to go into that.
But yeah, 2024 is going to be great. Mm-hmm. We got this every week, which is going to be so exciting to just creatively have an output to talk and to work on. You want to talk about? Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Oh God, the biggest one I've got right now is focusing on time management. It's funny, but it's legit something that I need to work on, because
well, I will say to work on time management, you have to have time management to begin with.
No, that is true.
I don't think you have much of that.
No.
So you're gonna be getting time management.
Hey, that'll be an upgrade.
Hey.
But once I've deleted a lot of my social medias. Figured out a way to have YouTube Shorts not be on my YouTube.
Which weird to think about that a platform would let you disable their biggest and new feature.
So it's not technically disabling it. There's not a button that you push to disable it. From what I saw, I literally had to look up how do you do this, and then somebody was like, well, here's how you can do it.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, that's weird if you could just disable their kind of biggest new form of media.
I get that, but for someone like me who's needing to get off of social media a lot more and not be just scrolling on my phone, I need those options, because I still want YouTube so I can have something to watch at times and stuff like that. I just don't want to be on YouTube Shorts for a long amount of time.
Which YouTube Shorts makes no sense.
It does if you really think about how far TikTok has gone.
Yeah, but I guess that goes into social media stealing from each other. And at what point do we just conglomerate into one giant social media?
That's why I fucking hate social media. I hate social media for a lot of things, but I deleted my Pinterest, which isn't a big one, but it was enough for me to continuously scroll on my phone. And probably the most massive one I deleted was Webtoons. I love the fuck out of Webtoons. Don't get me wrong. The comics that they have on there are fucking phenomenal.
Yeah. Support artists.
Support artists for sure. And a lot of it comes from Korean base, which is awesome. And you don't see a lot of media from Korea, and especially not here in the States, unless you're really looking for it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very cool, but I can just spend hours going through different comics and falling into that trap, so I had to get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's the start of me trying to figure out how to work and do things without using my phone as a crutch for dopamine.
Yeah. Yeah, escapism with social media and the internet in general is absolutely going to be something I talk about down the road, because how the society has led itself into the internet, which I love, and I will never down talk the age of not electricity, because that was at least a year ago.
Yeah.
But the age of the internet
Yeah.
I love it. I think where we're going is very fun. It is something that I don't think our society has really learned to deal with, because you get kind of our generation who's 20, 30s that are just like, well, we kind of grew up with not much internet or like social media, but by the time we hit like teens, which is really developmental period, it's all we had.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, how do we, when we start to grow up and realize, hey, maybe scrolling on Instagram or TikTok for 3 hours isn't the best use of my time, but that's all I knew when I grew up, especially in the possibly the worst of times, depression,
for sure,
puberty, being like, well, YouTube's the only thing that saves me. So how do I not leave that to be a coping mechanism when I get to my 35-year-old self?
It's such a weird thing, especially since now we're starting to make stuff to put on the internet. There's so, how I see the internet right now, at least, it's so much of the Wild West.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
It is, and it doesn't mean that there's not structure. There's been structure that has been in place, but the problem is that structure either combats what the internet is good at, or people just get pissed off at it because it's structure, and people are so used to just being able to do whatever they fucking want on the internet.
Yeah.
That, it's like outlaws in the Wild West.
Yeah.
When outlaws were very much a thing, they were the ones who were actively against the law coming to America because they wanted to continue to do their pilfering and awful toxicity bullshit.
I always think of the internet like, for anyone that has animals, like cats and dogs, you really shouldn't, and some people do, but you really shouldn't just leave the whole bag of food out for them to feed on, because at a certain point, they're going to continually go back and they're going to gorge themselves, and they're going to get to the point where they make themselves sick, and, then you hit levels that are, like, just unhealthy. And that's kind of how I see the internet, is that we gained access to something that is unlimited, and with no restriction, because it is the Wild West, of intake.
Yeah.
So for the first, 20 years, we were just gorging ourselves on anything and everything. And I think recently we've started to notice that, like, hey, maybe we should be restricting intake, or we should be not just letting ourselves be on this 24/7. And I don't know if that is really society as a whole, but more of just, we're just getting older. Because I feel like that's always kind of it is. As a teen, as a youth, you do that, and then as you get older, you go, oh, it feels like the world's changing. But it's like, you see what Gen Alpha is. It's just the same level of intake that we were.
Well, here's the thing. I think part of it is that we're getting older, but another part of it is we are starting to realize that our lives are starting to get wasted away by scrolling. Yeah. So it's like, what it comes down to is, really think about the older generation. Is the older generation any smarter than us right now, when they didn't have computers in their pockets that can have all the information?
They were geniuses for what they knew.
From what they knew.
Which is all, again, very localized culture.
Exactly. But now it's we legit have the entirety of information within the pockets of our pants. We can look up whatever we need, whatever we want. There's many things that go in through an app. It's so, it's the biggest reason why schooling is also having a big problem with kids being at school.
Yeah.
There are factors that go into it, but ultimately there is good that comes from the internet.
Oh,
There's bad. And we'll talk about this more in length.
Yeah, the escapism of the internet is going to be very interesting to, like, fully delve into. But, no, I get time management. Going back to what you were saying, time management is sort of the real big thing of learning to cut back or go, okay, why am I using it? If it is to relax, if it is to, de-stress after work, well, how much time do I need to do that? It doesn't need to be 6 hours on YouTube.
No.
Like, maybe I'll just give myself an hour or 30 minutes or do something else that's relaxing.
Well, there was a point where I would be coming home wanting to either work on something or even just, like, play a game. And then I would lay on my bed scrolling on stuff for hours, and then I'm like, I've just wasted my entire day.
The amount of time I've spent my entire workday being like, I'm so excited to plan for my D&D campaign, or to do this, to work on the podcast, get home, and you're like, well, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and then I come back, and it's like, oh, let me just check Instagram real quick. And then 4 hours go by. I'm like, it's 9 o'clock, and I work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, well, that just entire day wasted.
Mm-hmm.
For what?
For
I couldn't even remember what I probably liked the last thing.
And that's the problem. It's easy dopamine.
Yeah.
So, and if there's one thing I've learned, especially like this, you see this a lot in like game development as well. Convenience is something that people are always going to lean towards.
Yeah.
Whether that is the intended way or not, if they find a convenient way and that convenient way stops working, they're gonna find another convenient way.
Yeah.
And that's just convenient dopamine. That is just literally a hit after every 10-second video.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, we've been talking about that for a while, but I mean, what are your New Year's resolutions? Going back into that topic.
Well, I had a great 2024, so I'm really what I'm wanting to do is push it forward.
Yeah.
I had a great 2023. I had a great 2024. I've existed in the future, and then I've come back.
Oh, wonderful. Did taxation go down?
I dare not say. No, I had a great 2023. It was... as much as I didn't do anything in the very last half of the year, it really was focusing on like mental health and realizing some things I did before, especially in college, which you get to such a state, when you go out of high school, you go, oh, college is going to be so different. It's going to be so new. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's the same repetition of what you did in high school. Now just with more freedom, more money, and no one there for you. So I was very lucky that I found my best friend in sophomore year, because it was just like living alone, and it's the Squidward meme, where it's the, he wakes up, he does his little like dance class, he rides his bike, he goes to work, he goes to sleep, and it's just that endless cycle. And so graduating, I was like, holy shit, you kind of open your eyes and you're like, the way I've lived isn't bad, but it's like you open your eyes to everything. And so I was like, okay, I really got to fix how I was. And I kind of cleaned up both my living quarters, but also just how I dealt with things. So 2024, I really want to kind of continue that. How do I keep it in a way that's best useful of my time? So I don't really scroll on Instagram or TikTok too much unless I'm at work. And then I watch a lot of YouTube, but I don't get into that like endless, like we talked about, the escapism of YouTube. It's more just like, hey, let me play some music, or let me play a fun like video game playlist while I do other things.
I found that long form, like either a podcast or like some streaming, is usually like a best way for me to like just kind of have it in the background while I'm doing something else.
And putting it on the TV,
that helps
out of sight, but you can still hear it. I plug it on TV and I'm like, I just forget about it.
Yep. That really helps a lot, especially when you're cleaning. Oh my god,
yeah. But yeah, I really want to this podcast, obviously, this is our first real topic episode, which is very exciting. Keeping it up, keeping it not 100%, because I don't imagine every session or every episode is going to be full energy, but keeping it, if we can get every episode to be 80%, that's my goal. It's every week, so it's going to be very difficult to research, edit, record, and then kind of do that same loop, but not make it feel repetitive.
Yeah. You're definitely going to have to like really communicate with each other about burnout and stuff like that for that kind of stuff, and really help each other out.
Yeah. And I think the topics help.
Having
a topic that you're very excited to talk about is going to be very fun. And then what I'm probably the most excited for in 2024 is my D&D campaign.
I'm so excited.
Lukas has ran our Tuesday campaign for a year and a half. We started last August. The end of summer, and we went all the way through 2022, the last bit of that, and all the way through 2023. And then we were a part of another friend's campaign,
Curse of Strahd.
So
which lasted
It was
about as much.
It was, I think, 9 to 10 months. We didn't hit a year, but we were getting close to it.
Yeah.
Which was very fun, very stressful, very dark, and gloomy.
That, not naming names, but that friend specifically is very, very good at realizing horror in tabletop. I've never seen it done to that extent, and never have been so actually scared and stressed out about fictional characters.
Yeah. So we ended that one. We ended both of them around the same time. My best friend and the Thursday DM, which are a couple, went to their vacation for 3 weeks, and so they're about to come back. I guess by the time this episode released, they will be back.
They will be back, yeah.
And we will be starting my campaign, which has kind of been where a lot of, if it's not this, which luckily doesn't take too much crazy planning, it's mostly just been planning an entire world of lore and cities and civilizations, and well, how do they trade, and what are their economics, what are their people like, what are some fun bits of culture.
I'm so excited that you get to be a part of that, because that was one of the most fun experiencing things that I was able to do for my campaign, was really think about culture.
Yeah.
And yours is so different because it's set in a book series.
Yeah, so it's set in the. I have a hard time saying it's set in it, because the book series is a legend.
It's inspired by it.
The Legends of the Dragon Realms.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book series. I don't remember who it's by. I'll look it up. But it's a wonderful book about a sorcerer who grows up in a world of dragon kings, and they rule the world for as long as anyone can remember. And it's this sort of, in the books, they're very depicted as, it's by Richard A. Knack, The Legends of the Dragon Realms. I read this book years ago. But it depicts the Dragon Kings as these tyrannical rulers, and, the humans are not slaves or anything, but this specific wizard grows up to be, his grandfather fought the Dragon Kings decades ago, and his father's a mad archmage who rivals the powers of the Dragon Kings, and it's very much a book about dragons are bad, we sorcerers are good, what is my goal to kind of destroy them? And so I started reading the book series again, and I was like, I love this world, but I feel like I want to do it differently.
Yeah.
I want to do it in a way that the Dragon Kings aren't really bad. They're not good, but they're kings for a reason. And I've taken, for the most part, I've taken the map, the Dragon Council, and some lore bits, and I kind of scrapped everything else. And I've built new cities, I've built new cultures, and the way the world functions. What's fun about it is getting to essentially grab what I want from the book, but then go, okay, the rest of it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So how do I fill it out now? And it saves a lot of time when it comes to, planning a campaign that you have no idea of anything is very difficult. Not even having a map, what you want. So it's essentially that shortcut of, well, I've got the first 10-15% done for free. And then what else do I get to fill out that I want for myself? So we're playing with a party that's going to be kind of all around the spectrums of, one of our players is very much for the Dragon Kings. One of our players is very against / not really in favor. We have someone that's playing both sides, and then one of our party members has never stepped foot in this realm.
That's probably one of my favorite.
Yeah, he knows nothing of this world, and so he's going to be this, I don't want to say third party, but just a being that's never experienced the cultural norms of this land. And it is set in D&D.
Yeah.
But I've changed a lot of it. We're not using gold or silver or platinum, because in a world of dragons, why would you have gold be the best and silver be second best? So I made my own currency system, and it just, my whole, going into 2024, I'm just throwing myself into this campaign, and I'm so excited to run it every Thursday and really just delve into being in a world. And I've never been able to run long form campaign. I've ran I think 2 or 3 campaigns.
You ran a short Call of Cthulhu game.
Yeah, which was fun.
So much fun.
Classic Call of Cthulhu, land or waterlocked islands. Very like mysterious. And then last summer I did a very classical like Lord of the Rings campaign for like 2 months.
Yeah,
it was the summer between sessions or between semesters for college.
All I remember for that campaign is like, we have no time to play around. you have this many eepisodes to get to, and that is done. We're done.
Like, essentially, there's no role play. I just need you guys to roll dice.
Yeah, exactly.
And imagine as like an ad lib. Like, give me a verb. Give me an adjective.
It was very
roll me
funny.
A dice.
It was still a lot of fun. Because playing those archetypes are very, very interesting. Like, I played a dwarf wizard.
Yeah, we first dwarf? No, we had a previous dwarf, I think. But we don't really see dwarves in our campaign a lot.
Not really. I was just talking to my roommate about this. You don't see dwarves, halflings, or gnomes be played very much at all.
Which I played a gnome for, almost a year?
You did?
The hard part with dwarves is that stat-wise, they don't feel as fun.
Mm-hmm.
They just get a lot of things that we don't really see much in campaigns, but I love dwarves. And I'm very excited to play with them. But that's mostly my plans for 2024 is podcast and work on this. And then I guess work more on my art.
Absolutely.
But
okay. So coming from there, we talked a lot about how we're doing, what things are. What's your weekly obsession this week? What have you been really obsessed with?
I have multiple, and I forgot most of them.
Of course.
But I think currently me and my boyfriend have been in a very sci-fi mood. I can't remember how it started. I found a podcast that talked about sci-fi, and we eventually watched like The Fifth Element, and we watched I think the new Dune a couple months ago, and we've been kind of touching our toes back into watching sci-fi movies, but we recently purchased the 6-film collection of Alien. So it has Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Covenant, or Prometheus, which... and then Alien Covenant, which is also... but we just watched Alien, which is 1979. I thought it was like 80s, 90s. It's 79.
That's awesome.
It's released... a year after something. Well, we were like, wow, this kind of looks like this movie, and we looked it up, and I don't know if it was Star Trek or Star Wars or something, but yeah, 1979.
That's really cool.
And it's beautiful. It's a great movie. I forgot kind of how scary it is at times, but also how much... I guess in my head, I remember Alien being such a longer movie, and it being this like slow build-up of intensity, but it really is kind of just... They wake up on the Nostromo, things kind of go well, they get a distress signal, then they go to the planet, and then things kind of just hit the fan from there.
Yeah.
It's like an hour and a half. But I was like, this makes sense why this is like critically acclaimed film.
Oh, yeah.
Why everybody loves this movie, and it's such a great movie, so...
I've only seen the first one, so I've not seen the rest of the movies.
Aliens is fun, because it goes much more into... So Alien is... The naming convention, it is a single xenomorph, where you got one on the ship, it's very scary, it's this, cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
Aliens takes a step back and goes, okay, we've seen the horrors of space, now let's go into, military-esque. You've got colony of aliens, you've got, people fighting, there's guns, it's very more action-packed.
Mm.
And then Alien 3 is very weird, they do a new thing, but... they kind of... The main girl gets sent to, a prison, and it's very strange, and then Resurrection goes even stranger, but the first 2 movies are fantastic.
Hell yeah.
But what are you obsessed about?
Oh, God. Get ready to strap in to your bootstraps, because I've been obsessed with this for a long time now, you know this, but I've really... the Ocean Saga just dropped.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
So I'm really, really obsessed with Epic the musical.
Mm-hmm.
For people who don't know, it's a musical that is about Odysseus and the whole journey that he goes through in the Odyssey.
Yeah.
And as somebody who loves Greek mythology, who loves that kind of history, seeing this musical and seeing how fucking well done it is so well done, and it is so much like Hamilton, and I mean, it was, you know, the first song that I remember seeing, like compilation of it, it basically had a Hamilton intro.
Yeah.
Before it was rewritten to have its own feel, but yeah, I've loved this musical so much, and Ocean Saga literally just released on Christmas, which is phenomenal. And me and my roommates, all of us, have been having the same song stuck in our head from that saga since it released.
I need to sit down and actually listen, because you've showed me so many of them. Like every time I feel like you get in my car, you're like, I got a song to show you, and it's the epic musical.
Well, it's so good, and everything, like, it's very inspired by like anime and video games, and you know, a lot of the stuff that we already love. But it has this really cool twist of how do you have that in a musical? Oh yeah, have the Latin chanting of boss fights within, you know,
the Dark Souls, like.
That's legit. The Cyclops boss fight that's in Polyphemus, that song is a full fucking boss fight.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be represented. It's supposed to show like the tactics of Odysseus, and it's so smart. It's so well done. I can't recommend it enough for anyone to really just check it out and really just sit down with it. It's inspired my D&D character for your campaign.
Yeah, we started your D&D character with this, and then we've changed it a little bit. It's gone a different route, but...
I then took another thing that I really liked and was like, hey, I'm going to keep the same thing, but what if I added this?
Yeah. Like, because by the time... I don't remember why you were... I don't know if something new came out from the Epic Saga, but by the time... Like, when I was starting to really get excited about the Dragon Realms... You started to like really get excited about something within it. I don't know if it was a new episode.
No, I think it just got introduced.
Okay.
To me. And then
because we both were kind of very, and we were like, what if we just combine them?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we were like, well, let's make it original.
Yeah,
let's not just copy.
But yeah, no. Ajax, who's going to be my character, is very heavily inspired by Odysseus, specifically from this musical. So. You know, we only had the first two sagas when I first introduced it.
What is the first two?
So we got the...
Because the Ocean Saga just released.
Yeah, so we got the Troy Saga. Which basically is the start of, like... It starts with Odysseus, like, being within the Trojan horse and talking to his men, being like, hey, we're about to go siege this. Yeah. Here's the plan. Here we go. Goes into, like, you know, how Odysseus... like, it's a vision from Zeus that he's getting killed from the son of Hector, so he has to kill the son of Hector. You know, then it goes into just a man, blah, 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 blah. The second saga is the Cyclops saga.
Oh.
So,
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's when we meet, you know, they've already been sailing in the Troy saga. They're starting to go that way. They met the Lotus Eaters. Then they go into the cave of Polyphemus. And deal with all the shenanigans that happened there. I'm not gonna say too much on it, but
don't spoil it.
No. But Ocean Saga is the third saga.
Yeah.
And
which I've heard some clips of, and it's gorgeous.
So good. We meet two gods, not even just like Poseidon. Like we meet the wind god. I can't remember her name, like Aeolus or something like that.
Wow.
But she's the one who like gives the bag to him that like holds the winds of the storm.
Oh,
yeah,
got you.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Please go support. I know there's a lot of people who already love it, but please go support it. If you love musicals, if you love Greek mythology,
if you love geek mythology,
I cannot recommend this musical enough.
I need to sit down and actually listen to it because I've heard a lot of bits and pieces and like single songs at a time, but I really need to sit down and like from start to finish listen to each saga.
And there's gonna be like 40 songs that he's writing, like, and he's already got most of them written down. He's just recording them and then releasing them now. So it's, you know, be a part of the journey. It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Well, that was a rant.
That was.
Do we want to
Sorry.
get back? No, do we want to get back or I guess get into what we're here for? The aesthetics of Zelda.
Yes. Okay, so to get us started, what do you know about Zelda?
Game Grumps. I only know Zelda through Game Grumps.
That's very fair.
I've watched I've watched Link Between Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Don't remember much. I've watched a little bit of Wind Waker.
Yes.
A little bit of Twilight Princess. But essentially nothing.
Heard.
Like I mostly just if you said one, I can probably picture it and see it in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't tell you any of the plot for the most point.
Absolutely.
I don't know anything else about it.
Well, today we're not going to be talking about the plot.
Woo!
Yeah, because the plot doesn't necessarily matter, because the plot has changed throughout all the games.
Yeah.
Which in my headcanon, all the games are actually just somebody saying a different version of The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, it feels almost like either parallel worlds, or if you were like to go to a different continent and you're like, have you heard The Legend of Zelda?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it was this one kid who was there to save his sister. It's like, that was a dark story of a teen. It's like, oh, that's all the same thing.
Yeah, but Zelda to me is a very important franchise. It introduced me to fantasy and swords, and very much influenced the type of aesthetics that I personally love within media.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that's built throughout time with like Hyper Light Drifter and stuff like that, but Zelda was the first. So yeah, I would love to rant to you today about the Zelda games and their aesthetics, and we're not going to be going into all the games.
We do not have enough time.
We do not have enough time. I selected a few that I think represent the best points of aesthetics, as well as just have some interesting like technical stuff and stuff that went through it.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and begin with Zelda 1, which Zelda 1 was made on or released on February 21st, 1986.
Damn, 86?
Yeah, 86. Think about that.
Wow.
Yeah, no, Zelda has been here for a very long time. But the reason why I chose it was also made by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka. Very, very well known for Nintendo directors. But the reason why I chose Zelda 1 was it was the basis of like how Zelda started. Where's the best start other than the actual place it started?
Yeah.
So many people already know this, but Miyamoto was very much inspired to make Zelda because he used to explore caves and forests in Shinobu, Japan, whenever he was a young kid, and he wanted to make a game that like really emphasized the feeling of like exploration.
Yeah.
It released onto the SNES, or not the SNES, the NES, which, if anyone knows, the NES is the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's the first Nintendo console that was ever really made, and it was very, very limited technically.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why, when you were talking about Zelda 1, I was like, oh, I was thinking Ocarina of Time.
A lot of people have
And then
association.
I was like, well, okay, I actually don't know what this looks like, so I just looked it up. This is the one I remember from Game Grumps a lot.
Yeah.
Where it's the flat, and it's just like the sword just poking out.
Yeah, it's just poking. Obviously, with it being a part of one of the first consoles ever, there was very much a limitation on what it could do, what it could look like, and stuff like that. I still say they did a pretty damn good job for Atari-based graphics. Almost. Like, Link is incredibly recognizable in the game. You very much understand that you're in a forest or in the mountains or something like that. You find these caves, you find the lakes and stuff. The enemies are super, super, they're limited in how they could be designed, but you can kind of tell a little bit each one what they were.
Yeah. And I mean, I would also say, like, most importantly with older games is people always like to say, like, oh, it's not bad because of its graphics. Well, anything old you can't really deem based on looks.
No.
Like, it's just at the time it was great. But the biggest thing is, kind of what we're talking about, is aesthetics. How they did what they did and make a recognizable game that stood out on its own, that's what still holds up to this day.
For
the
sure.
fact that it is its own game.
And the fact that, you can instantly recognize it is a big part of why it's such a, it still lasts to this day.
Last of Us?
Last of Us?
Very different game.
Very, yeah.
But a Last of Us inspired Zelda game?
Holy shit, would that be fucking cool.
Like zombies with Zelda and then like throwing out.
Well, we'll get into that actually.
Okay.
Okay, but of course the aesthetic back in the day, it was very much trying to get this kind of fantasy, typical fantasy feel without being like an RPG, a traditional RPG. By the way, I don't think Zeldas are RPGs. They're actually just Metroidvanias.
Yeah, because there's not really any role play.
No.
You don't have like dialogue choices. You don't go through really any.
You get items. You use those items to explore different areas, and
you kind of continue.
It's a Metroidvania.
I don't think it's a. Is it classified as a role play RPG?
A lot of people classify it as an RPG.
Because, I mean, by name, it's a role playing game. But what are you role playing?
Exactly. That's
also, Link is a silent character.
Yeah, I know.
How do you have role play with it? That doesn't... Oh my god.
Yeah, well, a lot of people still say it's one of the best, I see it all the time in top 10 RPG lists, like Zelda, Ocarina of Time, or something, blah, 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 blah. Zelda gets in... And it really is because it has the same aesthetics. It has the, it has the swords, the knights, the soldiers, the classic, like, dragons and stuff that are part of, all kinds of different RPGs. So, of course, people, associated RPGs and Zelda with the same thing. It makes a lot of sense. And that's how strong aesthetics can really influence that kind of stuff.
I just looked up what role-playing game is defined on, or defined as.
So hard to find.
For the most part, which, again, doesn't make sense for Zelda, it's defined as a game where a player takes control of a character in a well-defined world, which is any video game.
Mm-hmm.
But usually involved with some form of character development based on statistics. So things like Dark Souls,
the Final Fantasy games.
The Final Fantasy games where you kind of level up and then you can slot those level ups. I don't think Zelda has that.
No, not at all.
There is no form of... I mean, you get better weapons and all that stuff.
There's progression, but not in the same sense of, like, stat-based progression.
Unless they're classifying as, like, heart containers and, like, later down the line, like, energy containers. But that's not really, like, stat progression.
If that's the case, then, Metroid, whenever it first came out, that would be considered an RPG. Either way.
Yeah. That could be a rant later.
That could be a rant later, but either way, yeah. Also, bit side note, Tunic, which I recently played, is a game heavily inspired by Zelda. And it's really, really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Highly, highly recommend that game. But one of the things that I think it captures the best is, you didn't really get like an idea of what the characters were, who they were. There's only so much limitation to it. But the biggest thing that they do is, back in the day, for a lot of those games, you would get a booklet that would tell you the characters, show you the enemies, give you secrets and stuff like that. And that's where you see a lot of the style of Zelda, really. Where you actually see Link in his natural clothes, where you see, what the actual enemies look like. And it's very cartoony at the time.
Oh, yeah. Because it was 80s, 90s.
Which, video games were made for kids back in the day, blah, 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 blah. But what Tunic does really well, and I think is one of the most interesting mechanics of it, you find pages of its own booklet within the game.
Oh.
And it gives you, secrets and mechanics and stuff. It's so, so much fun. It's not for everyone, obviously. You can get lost very easily because the text itself is not even in English or any language that really is there. But it's so fun. It's so, so fun.
Well, as we get back into Zelda 1, do you want to explain what it looks like?
Absolutely. So Zelda 1 is... it had very limited like pixels and colors, so there was only so
Yeah.
much it could achieve. But Zelda 1 was very much this like top-down perspective, flat, like pixelated version of just open worldness.
Yeah. 8-bit, 16-bit, so that kind of...
Yeah, something around there.
Yeah.
Like, the most defining thing for Link was his green clothes. That was the only way you could really define him as the main character.
Because it's a bright green. It's like neon lime green.
Well, again, they only had like a palette of like 56 colors, and they had to like, and the only reason they had is because they had to keep interlocking colors at the time to make new colors. So with that sort of like limitation upon it, there was only so much they could do. You know, it's like Mario only has his iconic mustache because they could not define a mouth for him. So they gave him a mustache.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's one of the most iconic features of Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to separate the color of his skin from the color of his his clothes.
Oh.
So they added his mustache.
Giant brown mustache.
Exactly. So Zelda 1 isn't like the best looker, but it is what started like, the natural forests and dungeons and stuff like that from, very, very early on. Now, the upgrade to Zelda 1, I would say, is Link to the Past. Link to the Past was released November, here in America, November 21st, 1998, or 1991.
So what? 91?
91.
So 3 years later?
Yeah.
Damn.
It was released for the SNES, kind of released with the console. Obviously, the SNES had way more computing power, pixels, and colors. Auditory dyslexia.
Computing powder.
That's gonna sound great on the mic.
Oh yeah. It definitely looks a lot better.
Oh, it had so much more detail that it could actually function. So Link actually has a face. He has more.
Yeah.
He has more of a a body. Like you can actually see his body and face and everything a lot more than you could in Zelda 1. But what I think specifically was better in Link to the Past was they could really define what the world looked like. So you have now the very classic things of Death Mountain. Death Mountain was made in I think it actually was made in Zelda 2, but it was really pushed in Zelda Link to the Past. With this like very volcanic mountain and that like it's doom and gloom, but you could also see the different enemies that like hopped around and the forests were vibrant and the colors were great. You could actually see shadows that kind of went down and light that kind of went through. It was all very colorful and still had this like cartoony feel to it.
What is it called?
Link to the Past?
No, the mountain.
Death Mountain.
Sounds a little too similar to Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings.
I think that kind of was an inspiration.
I mean, yeah.
But I'm not an expert on that, but I wouldn't be surprised. But this is also where we start seeing, different themes from Zelda. And starting to have more of a defined look for how Zelda looks.
Because it's less pixel. I mean, looking at pictures between Zelda 1 and Link to the Past, very much less pixelated.
Oh yeah,
it goes from that 8-bit pixel to kind of actual pixel art we'd kind of see now, where a lot of the terrain is smoothed out, and you're only really getting pixels on the very edge of things. Most noticeably, and I don't know if we're going to talk about this, is the color scheme. I'm not going to lie, I kind of like Zelda 1 a bit.
Really?
Well, Zelda 1 is so vibrant and bright. The sands are this like kind of neon cream. The forest is this bright, deep green. Link specifically is very neon yellow green.
That's
and then you
fair.
move into Link to the Past, and like the first few images I see are this kind of darker, muted forest where it's not so bright. He blends a little bit in with the background. That green is super similar to the grass. More variation of color, which is very nice, and it feels more like a polished game, obviously, but it does feel less color-wise unique.
That's
it kind
fair.
of feels like every other RPG, I guess if we're calling it, at the time, where it's just color of a forest. This trees are obviously green, grass is green, dirt is brown, and it's this kind of, and then they took his very like lime green color and then kind of muted it closer to more just normal green. So while it looks cleaner, I do think Zelda 1 does a better job of its color scheme. It's the thing of sometimes simplicity is best.
I get that.
Having more colors doesn't make it better.
I get that. I disagree necessarily. Your opinion is valid for sure, but
Thank you. Otherwise, this podcast is an issue.
Yeah, exactly. But the reason why I think Link to the Past is probably better in a lot of aspects, whether that be coloring or not only for gameplay reasons, but aesthetically, it started to really define itself.
Yeah.
Zelda 1 was, it was that typical fantasy. You're fighting dragons, you're fighting, a pig demon dude, like when Zelda Link to the Past came out, you started to really see the different styles of like what the creatures were and what the characters were.
Oh yeah.
It was a lot more cartoony. Especially if you see the booklets and stuff, you can see like it was very heavily inspired by like mangas and more of an anime like early anime style. Like Astro Boy and stuff like that. And you see, it kept a lot of the same charm from like Zelda 1, but it still like was still it very much rambling. It still very much defined itself more as a cohesive like whole in my eyes.
It absolutely looks like it said, hey, this went well, but instead of just redoing it, how do we make it better? When did we get first like the temples? Is that in Zelda 1?
So Zelda 1 does have like dungeons and temples and stuff, but they were all a little samey. It was like they were just recolored, like very brick backgrounds. The maps were interesting because they could actually make the maps look like something. But in terms of like what you were exploring, it was very limited in like how it looked. Like the forest temple is going to look the same as like the last temple, honestly.
Yeah.
Like there might be more water in one or something else, but there's no trees, there's no vegetation because they couldn't show that.
Yeah.
Link to the Past is when they really started fucking making temples look unique.
Yeah, because I remember I've watched a little bit of Link to the Past. This one I remember a decent amount of, but like I remember the dungeons being something that's cool, and they like you said before, felt very much their own thing. They weren't just copied and pasted from the previous. They took on it, they gave it new color schemes, new layouts, which I would say is more game design than aesthetics, but I mean they go kind of hand in hand of. If you're going to make something look good, why not make it feel better also?
Well, okay, so aesthetically, what I love about Link to the Past and what they really start emphasizing is the different elements of dungeons. You know how I love my dungeons in D&D. I love making them like have their own gimmicks.
Oh yeah.
I very much enjoy gimmicks. The forest temple looks like a forest temple. You see vegetation, you see, you see animals, you see all these different things within the temple itself. You start seeing different elements that are part of these temples that represent the background that they're a part of. The water temple, there's a lot more water into it, but it also plays with water elements and what they explore. And again, it's still limited in what it could do and like how it could show those elements, but it still added enough like of its own aesthetic for each temple.
Oh yeah.
It still made it to where every temple felt unique and different and it's one of the things I personally love about Zelda is like, this is still early classic Zelda, so it's it's got the forest, the water, the elemental temples, but later on, and I make note of this later on, we start seeing some very unique designs for temples, and some of my personal favorites come into some of the later games.
What is the next game?
So, real quick, one part I just want to add for Link to the Past. It does start having a specific theme that I really, really love, and it comes from the Dark World.
Oh.
Yeah, so Link to the Past has this thing where you can switch from the light world and the dark world. The dark world changes everything that we just talked about. It completely changes the environment. Like, the map is very similar. The overworld map is very similar. But it changes, like, the color schemes and makes it more dark and gritty and has this, like, feeling of death and decay with stronger enemies, a darker color palette, and stuff like that.
Which I love. I feel like we don't get enough. Even nowadays, I feel like we don't get a lot of games that deal with a world that has two statuses or two, I guess status is the best word to say. Like, you've got the normal world and you've got the dark world, and being able to switch between those, even at like designated locations, is still. But like, we don't really get to see many games that do that. That say, here's the world but we've also got the same world that's a completely different aesthetic that feels different, plays different, but looks or feels like the same location.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the? I don't even know if I can name one.
I couldn't name one that wouldn't be like a
Zelda. Yeah. Because Zelda does that a lot, where you go between kind of a two-state world. I mean, even there's a Link Between Worlds.
Yep.
That you go between two things, which I guess is...
It's basically just a revamped version of Link to the Past, but it's still very cool.
With its own take on it.
But yeah, the next game that we're going to talk about is the game that immediately went after Link to the Past, and is our first 3D Zelda game. That being Ocarina of Time.
Ocarina of Time, yeah. I had a feeling.
Yep. Ocarina of Time was released in November 21st, 1998. Only a couple weeks after I was born, which is wild to me.
You say 98?
98.
Old.
I know, I'm an old man. I'm 25, man. I'm old.
Old.
It was a day away from my sister's birthday, but a few years.
So not similar at all.
Well, she's born November 20th, but like 2001.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, this is the Zelda that people recognize the most when they think of Zelda. This is the Zelda that made the hugest leap, not only technically but also aesthetically. Gone are the days of the very classical cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon vibe that we see from Zelda and the booklets and stuff. Now we've got some gritty realism. Now the textures are a lot more dark and more rigid, and that comes from the polygons that came from the system itself.
Yeah.
But this is when they really started to try to make it more of a realistic version.
Well, because I don't know if you know much about, in the sense of modeling, but when you go from Zelda 1, Link to the Past, which are pixel games, you're not really building worlds in a sense that are like located. You're building essentially pixel blocks.
Yeah.
And so you don't have things like, a shading is just a different pixel color. When you get to 3D worlds and 3D modeling, those are just image planes or like vectors and boxes. Then you have to texture, which is where we get a lot of the the grass and the trees and the castles. Don't feel like they're just a brown pixel with a darker brown for shading. It is an actual texture upon an object, which is the first step into semi-realistic games. And it is. I remember watching this game and being like, I didn't watch it when I was a kid. I watched it much, much later when we actually got realistic 3D games. But still, I was like, for being 90s, this is incredibly impressive to have a world that, though is very flat and rigid, texturally and aesthetically looks very good for its time.
Oh yeah.
Say like, oh, the grass has like dark splotches of texture, and the trees kind of have the cutout of semi leaves and all that stuff.
And when I say, realistic, it's still a fantasy game. It's still very much set in that fantasy genre. So it's hard to say that there's any like actual realism going on. The characters are super modeled weird and look completely different from any real humans you'll ever see. But what I mean is that texturing, is that like, this is when things started actually having this darker form where, and where things actually looked like, instead of like pixelated drawings, it looked like a mountain. It looked like a castle. It has
the not geology. Oh my god, the geometry. The actual space of a mountain.
Exactly.
It's not just, hey, here's some pixels that you're supposed to read as a mountain because it's flat. No, instead you're going, okay, when I move from point A to point B, I'm seeing the mountain move. I'm seeing the world change around me.
So Ocarina of Time was my first ever Zelda. It was my first ever Zelda game that I ever played. I remember playing it when I was 4 years old at my grandma's place. My uncle was playing it, and he was at the final part of Ocarina of Time. Spoilers for a game that was
24-year-old.
Yeah, 20.
Oh no, 91?
98. So a 25-year-old game.
25-year-old game. If you never played it, now's the time.
Now's the time. There's a 3DS version. Go get it.
Oh yeah, they probably did remaster.
Oh yeah, no, they did a full remaster, and from what I remember, I see him do this final part of the game, and it hooked me immediately because it was this dark castle, that looked real enough to be like this foreboding, actually terrifying place instead of this like silly cartoon looking thing. It's this like actual dark setting where the final boss is, and it's crumbling all around him, and he's having to rush away. This is the Zelda that like took things more seriously.
Because there's a lot of moments in this game where you go, oh, either I'm freaked out, I'm afraid, or like this is just uncomfortable. You got, all of the sewers and the skull.
Yeah, the well, the dark.
Yeah, the dark well. Then you got the little spider gem, the skull. Skulltulas. Yeah. Which are terrifying. You've got the weird little like zombie people that like moan and walk toward
Re-deads, yeah.
Yeah, they really. It's such a weird thing to be like, it's such a bright game, but then there's so many moments where they go, no, it's not just a child's game. Or it is, but they started to, I think, like at this point, really hook in the adult audience and say,
for sure,
hey, there's more than just kind of this 2D pixel, bright colors and everything.
And so, the thing that I really want to talk about aesthetically with Ocarina of Time, and I could talk endlessly about it because it's my favorite feature that it does, is the when you pull the Master Sword, Link goes to sleep for 7 years. He has to grow. You become an adult version of Link, which is super cool. We've never seen that before. He's always been this kid.
Yeah.
So then you see this like 17-year-old adult version of Link. He looks like a 90s kid pulled from the future, pulled into the past, kind of badass hero. And you exit out of the Temple of Time, where you were preserved by the sages, and Hyrule Town is destroyed.
Yep.
The entire town is completely in ruins. There are re-deads that are going through everything, and aesthetically it is beautiful. What once was this vibrant, like, bustling town that had all these interesting characters and very awesome anime designed, like, people and stories within it, and just had this light, vibrant color to it. It looks like... You ever seen Shrek? You've seen Shrek.
Oh, yeah. Love Shrek.
Lord Farquaad's, like, place,
Yeah.
It looked so much like that, just in rubble.
Yeah.
Completely in rubble. And then you see the castle that you met Zelda in the first place, completely obscured in red and darkness, and you can't get to it. There's no bridge, and you just have to leave it behind. so you can go to the other places and start fixing it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful design. It's, you know, it really shows the difference between like you know, the kid version's like point of view and the adult version's point of view, because like, you know, as we get older, this stuff does decay, stuff does go away. We, you know, that Pizza Hut that was down around the corner is now closed and being demolished, like that.
Yeah,
that's just how it goes with life. And so to see that kind of happen in a video game, this was the first time that you would ever see that, you know.
Is this the first time you experienced time as a concept?
As a 4-year-old child, yeah.
Yeah, you went, holy shit, things exist. And
things exist in the world. I mean, I was 4 years old when I found out fucking Santa isn't real. So
yeah. You experienced a lot of...
I was very mature for my age.
Yeah. And again, very... You know, I didn't really put that together, but once again, a 2-state world where you've got... child version, you've got adult version, each with their own aesthetics, though same location and same reusing of geometry and how things are textured, but just different, 2 completely different aesthetics,
for sure,
like worlds apart. Where yeah, you've got one town that's bustling and you're talking to people, and the next part is it's crumbled and you've got essentially zombies running around and everything looks grittier.
Speaking of 2 extremely different aesthetics, we're going to be moving on to the next game.
Okay.
And then probably moving on to the game after that.
I think I know these 2.
Yep. It's the 2 that released on GameCube. We got Wind Waker, which was released in March 24th of 2003.
Damn, Wind Waker's that old?
And Wind Waker's that old. You wouldn't think it, though.
I wouldn't think it.
Yeah, and we got it for the GameCube. So, little fun history thing with that. When they were introducing the console, the GameCube, one of the things that they had as a promo was Ocarina of Time's Link fighting Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf, but with updated GameCube graphics.
Ooh.
It was awesome. People were super excited about it. Because it was a much more realistic looking Link.
Yeah.
It, you know, and much, you know, more detailed, more, you know, sharp. You could actually see him expressing himself more. It was awesome. Then Wind Waker is the first Zelda game to come out.
Yeah.
We are back to that cartoony style. Super, super cartoony.
Yeah.
We are back to what is called cell shading, which is an awesome thing that I see video games do a lot more now. Like Hi-Fi Rush does it. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom does it. Cell shading is this like timeless like color palettes of like very vibrant colors and very smooth texturing that makes it classic, makes it timeless.
Yeah.
It goes kind of back into that link to the past aesthetic, you know, more vibrant colors, more cartoony style, you know, and I still say Link to the Past looks fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
But this is where, we really start seeing a very different version of Link. He's smaller, he's a kid again, you know, it's... What is known as Toon Link is what the community calls him.
It's very cartoonish.
It's very cartoonish.
It almost feels... Because I've watched quite a bit of Wind Waker. It almost feels like... Well, I guess that's the point, is he's not Zelda, is he? It's like a whole different...
Kind of.
He's like Zelda, but he's not Zelda, because the previous Zelda...
Well, it's set in... it's right after... In the timeline, it's the... You know, it's right after Ocarina of Time. The whole world gets flooded. The Legend of the Hero still lives on.
Because I thought the grandma was like, here's clothes of a legendary hero.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's not Zelda in a sense.
He is Link, but this isn't...
Or Link, sorry.
Yeah, this isn't... Yeah, he's never been Zelda.
Never Zelda.
Oh my god. I'd pimp slap you. But he's never been... you know, he's not the same kind of Link that you're supposed to recognize. You know, you get that awesome Ocarina of Time trailer, and then you see this kid who, you know, he's named as Link, and he looks a little bit like him, but he's not Link.
That was my biggest thing is, and that's why I talked about that, is that this version of Link, feels like he's not self-aware of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all the previous Links were like, I am a hero, I have to do this to save the world. In Wind Waker, Link is just like, I gotta go rescue my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's just very goofy to the point of like, is it necessary?
So that's kind of that's a really cool thing that they do with the story is Link is kind of pushed into the hero role. He was out to go save his sister for sure. He never wanted to be the hero of the winds that he gets the title of.
Yeah.
He was going to go save his sister. He didn't even really like being in the hero clothes. He just ended up being in the hero clothes because it was a tradition that his grandma wanted him to follow. But all the young boys, when they get to a certain age, have to wear the hero's clothes for like a ceremony. Hell, there's not even a Princess Zelda in the game. Well, there is, but her name is Terra.
Yeah.
She's not actually Zelda. She gets transformed into Zelda when you go back into the depths of Hyrule. But necessarily, Zelda wasn't Zelda. She was Terra. She was a whole different person. Yeah. She was a pirate. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, she had a
little crew.
She has a whole crew. She's a pirate captain. So, you know, of course, with Wind Waker coming out and having this very much more cartoony aesthetic, and Wind Waker still looks beautiful to this day, and that is because of the cell shading. It will always have this like timeless look to it.
Because you can't really age cell shading. It's not like pixel art where you think, okay, pixel is the 80s, the 90s, like maybe late 2000s. And then, you know, we get into actual like real-time rendering of like shapes and shadows. Cell shading is just an art style. It's like the game Konami. Yeah, like you can't really age that because it's a specific style that doesn't have a timeline. It's just how something was made.
Yes.
You might age when it was made, or it's like, oh, that was popular in that time, but the style itself is, like you said, kind of timeless.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
one thing I will say, Wind Waker to me feels like if Zelda 1 never had any sequels and spent 20 years in like purgatory, and then they came out with a Zelda 2 in like the 2000s, and it's this game. It's the same neon bright colors, the same kind of like, Zelda's kind of just there, and you don't really know much about him, and it's just kind of a world you don't like. The aesthetics feel very much like there was a jump from Zelda 1 to whatever it was in between to now this game, and they look very similar.
For sure.
It's that same neon bright cream color I was talking about for the sand, and the green is super bright and the water is super bright, which is what I kind of didn't. It's what I didn't like about Link Between Worlds, Link to the Past, and Ocarina of Time was, it was like there was one extremity of the brightness, and then they took a couple steps back, but didn't really commit to changing the aesthetics.
Yep.
And then Wind Waker said, no, let's retake those steps forward and like really go to that extremity, because we're about to see what I'm assuming is the opposite of that.
Yep. So fans were pissed.
I can deeply imagine.
Fans were super, super mad about this. Because it was so much of a departure from Ocarina of Time, which was such a beloved game.
Yeah.
A lot of people loved Ocarina of Time, and they wanted more of this, like, realistic fantasy.
Yeah.
And this, like, you know, they wanted the textures to be gritty and dark and to have this, like, feel that there is dark things happening. There's plenty of dark things that happen in Wind Waker, but when you're sitting down and playing Wind Waker, you're playing a cartoon.
Yeah, it's hard to feel that creepiness and edginess when something is colored an eye-piercing purple.
Exactly.
And you're like, it's the blinding.
So, in response to this, at November 19th, November 19, 2006.
Which is, what, 3 years?
3 years. The best year for all of the edgy games that you can think of, like Sonic 06. You get Twilight Princess. So, yeah, Twilight Princess was absolutely released in the demands of the fans after Wind Waker was released.
Yeah.
People were demanding that there be a much more realistic, much more dark, much more edgy, much more gritty version of Link, Zelda, and all the characters we come to love.
Yeah.
So, if you look at what Link to or Twilight Princess is, it is so much of the opposite.
Oh,
it is textured so much darker, so much more realistic. It is character design wise much more realistic in the terms of proportions, at least when it comes to Link, Zelda, and probably the newest character, Midna.
Yeah.
They actually look good. They're the only characters that I think that look good. Yes, I said it. Fight me, nerds. Because honestly, when you really look at the game now compared to Wind Waker, it's an ugly ass game, and I'm sorry, everyone.
It
just is.
I love Twilight Princess. I love this aesthetic. I love the way it's gritty and dark. Like, if I grew up with Zelda, this is probably what I would play till the end of time.
That's fair. See, my problem with Twilight Princess, and don't get me wrong, I fucking love Twilight Princess. I love all of these games that we are talking about. I'm the biggest Zelda stan you'll fucking ever meet. The thing that I cannot stand is the sense that they had to make it like Ocarina of Time. It basically has the same type of setup as Ocarina of Time. Gameplay-wise, aesthetics-wise, it's sharper looking, but it's just Ocarina of Time 2. I'm sorry, it is. It's just Ocarina of Time 2. Or Ocarina of Time 3 if you consider Majora's Mask actual sequel to Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Which technically it is, but I mean, you're going into a whole different place. It's the same Link, but you're going to a whole different place. So but yeah, no, it's just Ocarina of Time too. You're going through the same types of temples. You're going through the same type of places, that you would see in Ocarina of Time. You get the Forest Temple. You got all these different things. There's nothing about Twilight Princess other than the actual Twilight Realms and stuff like that isn't different from Ocarina of Time. The Twilight Realms is fucking awesome. Because it is so... What do you think when you think of a like beams of shadow? What beams of like actual shadow?
Probably Sauron in Lord of the Rings.
That's fair.
Like an actual, it's just shadow, shape of a person. You don't see much. Or, I don't know if this was made before or after, but Dark Souls 1, you get like the pygmy in the DLC where it's just like wisp of shadow people kind of there.
That's fair. For me, the Twilight are so fucking awesome as what they are to represent shadow people. It's exactly the thing that I would want them to look like. They have these gray and blacks to their skin colors, these bright kind of like orange eyes to them.
I see them.
Mm-hmm. Like they're all shaped a little interesting and weird, but they are people who are supposed to represent shadow.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And it is like I've lost my train of thought. It is probably one of the most notable things that Twilight Princess does in terms of aesthetics. Like if you go to the Twilight Realm, it's vastly different from Hyrule. It's the same kind of like Link to the Past, the Light World versus Dark World.
Yeah.
Every time that he gets transformed into Wolf Link, he's basically hopping into like a seeping part of the Twilight.
Yeah.
everything goes like an orangish and dark, and like you're like, oh, this is unsettling. There's these weird creatures and monsters, and it's horrifying, and especially in a game that's already like set in already a gritty realism dark setting, for it to turn into this more gritty dark shadowy place. I think they fucking nailed it. It's beautiful in what they do with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the two games that definitely had the most diverse parts of like aesthetics when it comes to Zelda.
Yeah, and you get everything in between, where Zelda 1 is very much towards Wind Waker. Ocarina of Time is, I would say, a kind of good middle ground, where you've got for majority of it is very bright and bubbly, and even when you become adult Link, it's still very bright-ish. It's just a darker theme. And then you get, Link Between Worlds is still very bright and bubbly. And a lot of the Zelda games are like that, so that's why I kind of love Twilight Princess, regardless of whether they were forced to make it or not.
Oh, for sure.
Make something displeasable to enjoy.
No,
and I will say,
Majora's Mask was forced to be made in a year, and it's still a fucking phenomenal game.
In my eyes, all the Zelda games are the same. They all have that same feeling of, hey, wake up, you're gonna go on an adventure. Alright, go to the first temple, which is really simple and easy. Typically a forest temple or something based like that. Or the first dungeon. Okay, cool, you got like a slightly either new sword or a new ability, like now you can throw bombs, or you've got a grappling hook. Go to a slightly different dungeon that's like maybe blue and like water. And then it's like, okay, the last dungeon, fire.
Right.
And it, like, all the Zeldas kind of follow that, like, you start with like, ooh, welcome to the world that either you've experienced, but you kind of have to explain to the players, because kind of every Zelda game is different. Which just goes back to what I said, every game is similar.
Yeah.
But it is that, like, just because it's similar to Ocarina of Time, I don't see how that makes it any less different than every other Zelda game that is similar to every other Zelda game.
Well, that goes into more of the like mechanics of it, and how it like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess play very similarly. And that's just because they're on the same hardware.
That's like GameCube.
Yeah. But in terms of like aesthetically, it's Twilight Princess was definitely the more darker game of all of them.
Our Link looks, he looks 18 at this point. Like, he looks like an adult.
Yeah, he's the oldest kid within his like whole village. He gets trusted with like responsibilities and chores and tasks and all that stuff.
Even the way they model his face, like his eyebrows are at that downward slant, which gives him that like permanent,
like maturity,
like mature scowl look of just everything is. He lives in a constant state of like disapproval or frowning or just like that. When you close your face when you look at the sun.
But it's that very edgy kind of look, Yeah. And you see that happen for a lot of games, especially around this time, because that was the time where kids started to grow up into teenagers, and so the demand for the whole, it's funny, but the whole Banjo-Kazooie line of like, well, people don't like platformers anymore, they want guns and shooting and racing. It's like,
yeah,
well, yes, that was really shitty of them to fucking say that. It was a tell for the time.
Yeah, because I just looked it up because I was like, I'm interested. You've got Oblivion Game of the Year edition. You've got Disney Pixar Cars, greatest game of all time.
Wonderful.
Hitman, Tomb Raider. Let's see what else was there. Gary's Mod came out. Like, yeah, you've got a lot more realistic, very gritty, very kind of dark. Oh, Devil May Cry 3 came out at this time.
Like the 2006 was the year for the edgy games.
Yeah.
Like that is
100%.
And Zelda followed suit. That was just kind of where it went. But it really was Wind Waker was such an outlier from that, And I think that's why it had such a backlash at the time. But nowadays, it has much more of a very big following. Like, a lot of people love Wind Waker.
Oh, yeah. Of course, when you take these games outside of the... When you remove them from the time they were made or why they were made, the same reason why, I would say, hey, just because Twilight Princess was forced to be made doesn't make it a bad game. Just because Wind Waker wasn't the aesthetic that people were thinking doesn't make it a bad game.
For sure.
Which time is always great for that, because, 20 years go by and you go, oh, wait, no. Yeah, maybe at the time that's not what we wanted, but it's still a good game. Mm-hmm. It's still something that we enjoy playing. It just has a very niche following. Someone that, you kind of have to enjoy that aesthetic.
For sure.
Which I guess the Zelda games do very well in general. There's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And there are clumps of different styles of them.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I really love about Zelda is you say all the Zelda games are the same. And mechanically, I guess that they are. But with how they feel, how they are aesthetically, they are all different. They're all very different in just how they are. And it's why I wanted to do this rant in the first place of just like, everyone's like, well, what's the first Zelda game you want to get into? Should I get into? And it's like, my answer is different just depending on the person you are.
I think it's depending on what console you like. Because, they all feel the same because they're all released on different consoles. Mm-hmm. The NES is not going to be played the same as a Nintendo Switch.
For sure.
Or a GameCube. So it's more of, do you want to play that clunkier style, NES, really retro feel, or do you want more of a modern feel to a video game? Because it's kind of why I've never got into the Legend of Zelda games, is I don't really like the clunky oldness to mm-hmm. it. And recently, the new Zelda games, I don't see appeal to them. I don't like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Feel like they try to do something very nice or very, unique to the Zelda games, which is, in a sense, a true classic open world that's filled with things. Because, mm-hmm. Ocarina of Time has a lot of space you can travel.
For sure.
Not really filled with anything. But Breath of the Wild, it goes back to that Skyrim, like, I'm trying to think of other open world games where they're fun, but at a certain point you see the repetitiveness of the open world, which is, I'm like, do I really want to spend 60 hours in fighting, what are they called? Goblins? Not goblins.
Moblins.
Moblins. For the 70th time, just to get some really... It's my complaint about open worlds in general, but... they're different because of the console they're played on. So when people are like, what do I get into? It's more of a, well, aesthetically they're all different, and that's kind of just more up to you, but we play games for the sake of playing them. So mm-hmm. what do you enjoy playing? Do you like the clunky? Do you like that weird in between where like GameCube, then you get into, what's the Wii? Is that the next Nintendo?
That's the next one. It's not the next game that we are going to talk about. Or that I have on my mm-hmm. points, but it's Skyward Sword. Yeah, the dreaded Skyward Sword.
The Twilight Princess Part 2.
Yeah. No.
The Twilight Princess and Wind Waker Love Child.
Yeah, that's more accurate to say. So I don't have it on my notes, but it's a rant.
It fits the theme.
Yeah. Skyward Sword is basically the love child of, aesthetically at least, not mechanically, definitely fucking not mechanically, but aesthetically of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker.
Wind Waker. Well, yeah, because you take Twilight Princess model, mm-hmm. you take the way it's designed, the world, and you just give it the Wind Waker color scheme.
Yeah, the cell shading.
The cell shading, the brightness of everything, the
dream-like aspect of it.
Yeah. It's always like, it's so bright, but you still get a really older Link. Mm-hmm. You get a much more serious world that's kind of serious in its own sense, not just like, I'm the villain, I'm evil, more of like, no, things exist in this world, mm-hmm. time exists, people exist, cultures.
Mm-hmm. Different locations are very much a thing. You're not just going in... Well, you are, but I was gonna say you're not gonna go through like a whole bunch of islands, but you are. You're going through a bunch of fucking sky islands.
It's
but
the same thing of like you wake up and then dungeon.
So here's the thing. I know a lot of people hate Skyward Sword. I know. I'm not in that realm.
Why do they hate it? Because again, I'm not much
It is incredibly linear. There's not a whole lot of exploration. Here's the thing, people. Neither did fucking Twilight Princess have a lot of fucking exploration.
Yeah.
It was incredibly fucking linear.
In his exploration, because that's the same thing I go back to of, well, did, like Ocarina of Time have exploration? Or is it just, it's open world and people thought walking around to an empty environment was exploration?
That's kind of what Ocarina was, but it does have exploration in the sense of when you get new abilities, you can take them to other locations. This is why I say it's Metroidvania.
Yeah.
You can take them to other locations.
I agree with that.
And use them to, access other things you couldn't before. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you could in dungeons. Dungeons were usually specific to the item that was in the dungeon.
Yeah.
But like the open, the hub worlds, the open world, like there was a lot of secrets and stuff, pieces of heart that you could go find and collect in Ocarina of Time,
which I guess is what people think of as exploration.
That is exploration in a very loose sense. And Wind Waker had much more of an open feel because you're riding upon the ocean and like you're finding islands, you're charting stuff, you're making notes. That Wind Waker, I feel like it truly has exploration. Twilight Princess goes back into that Ocarina of Time style of like, you can kind of explore the openness of the hub world, but you kind of need to do the dungeons in the same order.
Very empty until you get the one object that lets you go collect the one secret.
Exactly. So what Skyward Sword did that Twilight Princess, I think, did start doing before, but was a little more open about it. Skyward Sword was very much like, hey, cool, you got an item. There's barely anything to explore other than the Sky Islands, and the Sky Islands have nothing on them.
Yeah.
You have these 3-section little worlds that you go and kind of explore. You can find secrets, but they're all pathways. They're all basically their own like weird dungeon feeling, like overworld things that go into different dungeons and different dungeons and different dungeons. It's just incredibly linear, and you go to them 3 separate times. Yeah. And only a little bit has changed about them.
I don't mind linear, and I play a lot of hack and slash third-person games, which are linear.
Mm-hmm.
No problem with linear games. When a linear game reuses the game just to make it longer, that's when I have an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about Devil May Cry 3.
You're not wrong.
I love that game. You play the game, and then you play the game backwards, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't have an issue with the linearness. Don't make me play the game twice within the same playthrough.
But that's the thing. Skyward Sword, you play it 3 times. So yeah, that's the major that mixed with the motion controls, mixed with not a lot of people enjoyed this. I loved the story. It was a very beautiful story of like Link and Zelda. Like it's the first canonical game, so it explains a lot of like, how did the Master Sword become a thing? How did how did Ganondorf wasn't even a character? So how did he come up? He came up because of this fucking actual evil demon named Demise, who, and all the Zelda games are basically reincarnations of the same people, which is Demise, Link, and Zelda, from that game, because Demise was like, I put a curse on you. We are going to continue to have this fight until I win.
Damn. The Triforce.
So, yeah. In terms of, going back to the actual topic, in terms of aesthetics, the Breath of the Wild it has that cell shading storybook kind of feel to it.
Breath of the Wild.
That's how I meant. Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword had that cell shading kind of feel to it. I still say it's a very beautiful game.
It's gorgeous. I love it. I love it becomes the predecessor to Breath of the Wild.
It does.
The starting in the open sky, this beautiful, I guess more of Tears of the Kingdom. Because Breath of the Wild didn't do too much of islands.
No.
Which is Tears of the Kingdom, just a Skyward Sword remastered?
No, absolutely not.
I'd like to argue that. I'm not, no, I don't care enough. But no, it's a very gorgeous game, and I can respect it as much as I respect Twilight Princess, where it really goes full head into its aesthetic. Where Twilight Princess goes, no, I am a dark, I am an edgy, I am a very gritty game, and I'm not gonna waver on that.
Yeah.
Skyward Sword does the same thing of no, I am modeled to be for an older audience, but I still have that same bubbly kind of childish feeling without it being forced upon you, kind of like Wind Waker.
For sure.
Because I love those two games.
Yeah, they're great. I fucking love Skyward Sword. I replayed that shit multiple times, even with its later. I can fully acknowledge it was a bad game sometimes, but I still loved it. But that does get me back to the actual games that I meant to talk about. The last two games, which I kind of just clumped them together because they're basically the same games, but that being Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Very similar.
Very similar games. So released on March 3rd, 2017, Breath of the Wild took the cell shading of Wind Waker and the more realistic character designs of Twilight Princess and created probably a even healthier blend of the two than Skyward Sword.
Oh, yeah.
So, obviously Breath of the Wild is a whole different fucking beast from the rest of the Zelda games. It is a fully open world Zelda game. We haven't seen a fully open world Zelda game since Zelda 1.
Yeah. And beautifully made.
Incredibly beautiful made.
Skyward Sword is a little bit, but every Zelda has been very stylized. Breath of the Wild is what we talked about in the beginning of just incredibly realistic, incredibly believable as an actual world that doesn't feel very strange. And you've got characters that interact with the world that is also very realistic.
Absolutely.
And so mix the aesthetic of, it's cell shading, but you've got actual grass physics, you've got tree physics, and there are things that just in the world go, oh no, this makes sense, and it looks beautiful, and it looks inviting. I think, in my eyes, Breath of the Wild, as much as I don't quite enjoy the gameplay, and that's just personal, is probably the best Zelda game without dealing with nostalgia, which is, I think, a huge part of the issue with the Zelda community of, people really like to refute new Zelda games because it doesn't have the nostalgic aspect of their Zelda game they grew up with and when they were childhood.
Ocarina of Time is still the best game in all of the Zelda games. It's dude, have you played Ocarina of Time?
Yeah. But because of nostalgia, they refuse to hold on to that. And coming from a third party, it's I never really played any of them. Breath of the Wild is a gorgeous game.
It is a gorgeous
And I know gameplay-wise, people love it.
So, Breath of the Wild is probably the Zelda game that fits my aesthetics and what I love very much aesthetically in a game. It just amplifies it more in Tears of the Kingdom, but we'll get into that. Breath of the Wild is this openness. It is this freedom. You start the entire game knowing nothing about the story.
Yeah.
Zelda has been taken away. She's keeping this Calamity Ganon that has destroyed the world 100 years ago at bay, so he does not hurt anything more.
Yeah.
So Calamity Ganon, for 100 years, has been stuck at Hyrule Castle. And it's just like, all right, here are some tasks that you can do, but we're not pushing you anywhere.
Yeah.
Go.
Be free.
Be free. If you go through the entirety of Breath of the Wild and you look into its world, there are ruins upon ruins. You see many ruins of some of the older games. It's like there's a whole place that looks like a place from Zelda 1, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
There are landscapes that have like geometry and broken parts. There's a whole mountain with a huge just like hole taken out of it.
Oh shit.
And like you figure out as you explore the game where a lot of these come from, what all these are. Like the hole in that mountain, for an example, like it's probably there because one of the divine beasts, these like massive technological temples and like armaments that were meant to fight Calamity Ganon, probably shot that fucking mountain and carved a hole. So the aesthetics that I personally love, and I see this happen in a lot of Zelda and a lot of fantasy, broken worlds being rebuilt.
Yeah, you do love those.
I love them. Breath of the Wild, I think, does it best, but you see it within all the other Zelda games.
Yeah.
You know, why are there temples? Why are there all these different places? You know, you see the Dark Worlds, you see the Twilight World, you see all these broken worlds, but yet there's Hyrule. There's this huge community of people. You find different towns within Breath of the Wild, within the other games. You know, people are still making a living. They're still going on. They're still celebrating the same gods and the same people. You know, it's... And you become a legend. It's known as the Legend of Zelda for a reason.
Yeah, because they never... from what I remember, cutscene-wise, they always start out kind of retelling the Legend of Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually get into gameplay, it's sort of just like, you don't know it. I mean, it's like, oh, we know Legend of Zelda. But the characters, you know, Link, Zelda themselves are all like, oh no, we're kind of our own people. Like, we know the legends, but we're our own people. And you get to make that legend again. Which I very love. Because it's always that fun part of, like, you start the game and it's like, the Legend of Zelda, and you get to hear the ancient lore.
Sure.
And then it's like, alright, you're playing a Link who knows nothing, who is a nobody, who can do kind of nothing, and you get to build it up to that.
For sure.
The prophecy.
The prophecy. But yeah, Breath of the Wild has all these incredible like elements. But yeah, then we go into Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild basically is set in the same world. It's basically the same. It's different mechanically. Just it has
that's game design.
But that's game design.
Yeah.
But it is very the same. What it does very much add, and I fucking love about it, is the culture of the Zonai.
Yeah.
The Zonai are incredibly, incredibly cool. As well as the Sky Islands and the Depths. So much of it feels ancient. So much of it feels broken. Yet you find constructs, you find all these things. You explore the dungeons of the Sky Islands and, you know, the mines of the Depths and, like, see all these wondrous things that in history that is left there. Breath of the Wild is the best example, and Tears of the Kingdom is the best example that I have ever had to the broken world, but it is being rebuilt.
Yeah, because a lot of video games like to just do broken world. I mean, Shadow of the Colossus is one of my first things I can think of like destroyed ancient world.
Yeah.
But there is no one to rebuild that.
Yeah.
There's no one living their lives, continuing on. Games really do love the hey, there was an apocalypse, a catastrophe, and that's it.
Yep.
There's nothing else.
Moving on. Last of Us. We're in the middle of an apocalypse.
Gears of War.
Yeah.
Gears of War is kind of an in between, but it mostly is just, hey, we're just surviving. Like, we're not rebuilding. We're just kind of surviving the locusts, and that's kind of it. And we're just fighting the last stand. But yeah, Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild really did go, hey, we're not the only people. Like, they kind of went heavy with this alien-esque symbolism, text, style.
Sure. With the Sheikah and everything.
Yeah, that's what it was. And then Tears of the Kingdom said, let me double down on that. Let me make a whole new world of people, the Zonai, which are this ancient technological race that lived before us, and really just delve first into this. The world existed before us, and it's, we've always kind of just played a person who's just kind of going into those ancient worlds and just cleaning up.
Yeah.
We aren't really playing a person who deals and delves and learns and explores those things. And they do that very well in both those games.
They do.
They're gorgeous. They're so pretty.
So pretty. But yeah, with that, I think that's about all I got. I love the Zelda games. I love how they are aesthetically, every single one of them. While they're all so different in a lot of ways, they're also extremely similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that, I just love Zelda for, it's introducing me to what heroes look like in broken worlds.
Yeah. I love Zelda because it's a game that existed when games kind of first existed. So we get to see the history of styles and of graphics throughout one consecutive lore, in a sense.
Franchise,
Franchise. Where you're comparing Link 1 to Tears of the Kingdom.
For sure.
And the vast difference that only, 30 years makes in something. Well, yes, they are their own games, and they are different, and they exist within their own world. Getting to see the same game essentially remade every couple years with just better graphics, better gameplay. To get what we have now, I would love to see a Twilight Princess now.
Oh my god.
That's made well. That deep, gritty realisticness that isn't super linear, that isn't just made because it has to be made.
Absolutely.
Like, I want to see, first of all, I'd love to see a Zelda game where Link is like 50. I've been
asking for that forever.
It's the feeling of like when Finn from Adventure Time becomes a man, and you get that like, I want to see a Twilight Princess remake where Link is 50 years old in an incredibly dark world. What happens when Gandalf wins? Ganondorf. What happens when Ganondorf wins? But the world isn't just obliterated to nothing. Is there a timeline where, kind of like the Lich, he succeeds and then kind of just stops?
Yeah.
Where it's just, okay, what happens to Link if he survives? Does he become this old hunter, this old adventurer? But, I mean, Tears of the Kingdom didn't do so well.
Tears of the Kingdom?
Tears of the Kingdom.
No, it did phenomenal.
And then it was quickly dropped off. When I talked to people about Breath of the Wild did amazing. It won, I think, Game of the Year at that time. Tears of the Kingdom was super similar to Breath of the Wild. It's something that when we talked about the old Legend of Zeldas, each one had something that was going for it. What was going for Tears of the Kingdom was the fusion thing, and a lot of people didn't like it because it kind of got rid of durability, but in a not fun way where there really wasn't much variety other than sticking two things up together. And as someone who doesn't play the Zelda games, seeing the hype of Tears of the Kingdom before it was released, and then about a month of it being released, and then almost nothing.
That's interesting.
Who's talking about Tears of the Kingdom right now? No one.
Okay.
A lot of people in the Zelda specific community, though.
That's true.
And in that sense, the new games are always meant to wrap in new people to the community, because someone who loved Ocarina of Time is going to play the new Zelda game no matter what. But it was so similar to Breath of the Wild that it's like, it didn't do what I see the Zeldas doing before, which is, hey, it is the same game, or it's a sequel. Here's something that's new about it. Ocarina of Time versus Majora's Mask.
Yeah, it basically took Breath of the Wild and made it better.
Yeah, it feels like a remaster with a slight different mechanic, which was, hey, we're getting rid of item durability, but instead items just kind of stick together now.
I see your point. That's an interesting point and takeaway from that. Thinking about it, I've not finished Tears of the Kingdom. I know a lot of people have, and I know a lot of people fucking love Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad game.
No.
But when I talk to people, even my boyfriend's like, I'd rather just play one or the other. You're not going to play them as together because it's essentially playing the same game with just two slight different aesthetics. He's like, he was talking to me because he just finished Breath of the Wild and started playing Tears of the Kingdom, and he's like, I'd rather just play Breath of the Wild again. Because why am I playing a same game but slightly different when I just finished playing it?
That's interesting.
Which is what I'm excited for of what the next Legend of Zelda game is going to be.
Oh, I'm incredibly excited.
Are they going to go back to an aesthetic? Are they going to make something that's like Wind Waker again?
Are they going to go back to that Metroidvania feel instead of open world? Are they going to, that's something I'm super excited to see. Because I don't want to, I love open world Zelda, don't get me wrong. I fucking loved Tears of the Kingdom. I love Breath of the Wild.
I would love a Castlevania styled. Like, a true Castlevania styled Legend of Zelda. Like, a true Metroidvania.
I want something similar to that as well. I think it would be a lot of fun.
I think it's just new, too.
Yeah.
I think Zelda just needs new.
Yeah. Well, I would say Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom was pretty new, but
that was 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
That's true.
Like, we're time for a new game. Because Tears of the Kingdom wasn't really aesthetically new. Which is what we just talked about. It's very visually the same.
Yep.
So, like, I want something new. And I'm excited for something new. And it might be, it's the time now where it might be the first time I kind of get into a game. Or a Legend of Zelda game.
I would love to see you get into one. Because they're super fun.
Yeah. But any other final thoughts about the aesthetics of Zelda?
I know we kind of were all over the place with this. We kind of went from aesthetics to gameplay to themes and stuff like that. But aesthetics is hard to talk about without getting into the other stuff.
Because, an aesthetic is how something vibes. It's how it feels. It's not just visual. The aesthetics of something is kind of how they play.
Exactly.
Which it is usually a lot of visual, but also sometimes how games, if it's a very clunky game, aesthetically it's going to feel very clunky.
For sure. But, yeah. All in all, I love these games. I will forever love these games. I don't love Nintendo at the moment, but I haven't loved Nintendo for a while. They need to really check their policies and get with the times. Yeah. In my eyes. But God, do they make good games? Yeah. God, do they make phenomenal games? And Zelda will forever be one of my favorites. Yeah. So I think for me, that's all I got.
Sweet. Then I guess we'll see each other next week.
We'll see each other next week for what's the next episode going to be?
The next episode is my episode, and I am talking about something that I think about all the time, which is family dynamics in video games. We see a lot of different types of families in video games and how they interact with each other, but also how sometimes us as players are forced into those situations as being a part of a family.
I'm so excited.
So I'm very excited for it.
That's gonna be.
See you next week.
I guess I'll see you next week. And to all you nerds out there, keep being a nerd, keep being geeks, and always be having fun, needlessly, endlessly ranting dumb shit.
Always rant.
Always rant. All right.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.